Right, so we have our number of entries now, and we can proceed with the rest of the problem, which consists of actually reading the entries and adding them to a correct data structure so we can be able to treat them correctly. A suitable data structure for this would be a simple array, or what's called a slice in Go. So I guess we can proceed by just creating a read function that will read these entries and return a slice of them. And we will use the number of entries that we have already read from standard input, and we can then define our read entries function up here. And it will pass on the number of entries as a parameter, and we also have to specify what it will return. And in this case it will return a slice of integers, or an error if it does not succeed for some reason. It will be good to have an error there. So let's define and initialize our slice. And we use the make for this. It'll be a slice of integers, and it'll be of size number of entries that we pass on as a parameter up here. Then we'll do a for loop over this array, which is jet not, or slice, which is jet not filled with any values, right? And we'll actually fill it with values. And we'll do this by scanning once again using the fmt.scanf, and it'll be integers, so we'll use the %d, and this time we'll point to our array and the specific index that we're looping over in this array, so we'll add it to the correct index. We can also handle this error, so if the error does contain something, it's not null or nil, we can return I guess the number of or the array up to this index that failed or caused the array error, and we can also return the error. So read entries will actually return, as we said, either a slice, a slice and an error basically. So then we also define return if the function proceeds correctly, loops over all of the entries correctly, will return the array and the error, which should be nil, yeah, since we don't have an error in this case, right? Okay, I think that would do it, and we can then also, we have to kind of here specify what we'll do with the output, and it would be good to store them. So let's store them in an entries variable, and let's disregard the error for now. So the first output will be the array, and the second one will be the error. And then we can do a print to verify that our entries looks correctly, just as we've done before, and we can go to our command prompt and look at what we get. Alright, it looks good. We received the correct entries slice, and it looks all good. So I think we're ready for the next step here. We now have the correct data structure, and we want to kind of sum the expenses up. So we need to identify what is an expense. How do we identify it? We know that it's negative numbers. So we kind of want to loop over this array, I think, and disregard all the positive numbers, only look at the negative ones, and simply just add them up. So what we can do is create another function where we initialize it. We define the function here, calculate expenses, and it will take in an entries array. Which is another slice of integers, and we will, in this case, I guess, return an integer, which will be the sum. So the sum we can initialize and define to 0, and then we loop over this entries array. And we can do this to disregard the index and look at the value in the array directly. We loop over the range of the slice, and we here can do a check. So is our entry, like the value of the entry, is it below 0? In that case, we should we want to include it right in the total expenses. So if it's below 0, we can add it to our total expenses, and we want the value there. Okay, and then we can return the total expenses. However, this should get us a negative number, right? Since we're adding up a number of negative entries, so we have to run the function for God's sake. So let's look at how we can run it. We run it by using the function here. We pass on the slice of entries. And what we can do here, since we can just print this out directly without storing it into another integer variable, just to see that we get the output there working. And we run it to check, and -2, it seems to be correct. We only have one in this case, one negative expense, or one expense, and it shows up here. So -2, -2. However, in this case, the correct output format would be a +2, since we want like a sum of all the expenses, excluding their negative number. So in this case, I think we have to get the absolute value, and I don't think we have a good function for that in Go. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have to write one, and it will not be a very complicated one, which a function for calculating the absolute value, and we would be able to use it here, abs_val, or abs value of our entry here. So something like that. Then we'll only look at the absolute value of those entries that already are below 0, so we know their expenses. We can calculate their absolute value, so we know that the sum of them will be positive. I think this approach would work. Let's create our absolute value function here. It will take in an integer, and it'll return an integer. So we only have to look at the value of this integer. And since we know, okay, so basically we know already that these are negative, right? So we don't really have to do this. We can only say that we can rename this function actually to pos value of, and then simply do something like this. Yeah, and then we have to call the correct function here, pos value of, and that should be good enough. And now we get 2 here, so that looks all good. Let's also try running the second input sample. Here we get 0, which seems to be correct since we only have positive inputs or entries, meaning that we only have incomes, no expenses in that case. And the third one, right, negative 6,800, 7,300. Yeah, it looks about correct, I would say. So I think we're pretty much ready to submit this to Kattis. Let's just remove all the unnecessary outputs and printouts to only include basically the last calculate expenses function output, which is the one we are interested in and Kattis first of all is interested in. Okay, I think that would be good. We can test it and see. Okay, looks good. We only return now what we are interested in, the final sum of expenses. So we press submit here and we navigate to our folder, our job expenses folder. We grab our Go script and simply drag and drop it into this. It should identify your file name here, and you can also verify that the language was correctly identified. And then you basically just press submit here and you wait for the judgment and hope that it looks good. Yeah. Alright, so I guess that was all for today. We have successfully completed the job expenses problem in Kattis, and there will be many more videos coming out very soon. I'll continue this series in Go and Kattis, and hopefully we can see this as an opportunity to grow as programmers and improve our skills in Go. I'll look at some more efficient input handling, so kind of increasing and improving on some times, as well as looking into some more difficult problems ahead. So I'm really excited about this, so hopefully you are too, and please subscribe if you haven't already, and please leave me feedback. I'm very appreciative of any kind of feedback on these videos, so if you have the time, please put one in the comments, and I'll see you very soon. This was Swedish Tea coming at you with another video. See you soon!